the panel is going to be moderated by our good friend Camilla Hellman. And Camilla, it's yours to start.
When this theme for the conference came up, of course, central to it is how music and the arts play such a huge component in how we can engage the youth, the next generation, etc., in our culture. And so this is very dear to my heart. ASF, as I know the Detroit St. Andrews does, have programs and ways of trying to help and foster this. It's very important to us. We've recognized this for a long time. And so I'm delighted that we've been able, over the last few years, to work with a lot of young people, some of whom are here today, and the Scottish Government so see this in this year of young people. We're now in our second year of it, and all that they are doing around it. And the support they have given to music has been incredible. If you go online and bring anything up, the energy that's going on around it is really, really inspiring. And I hope that while we're discussing all this, we can see how we can bring some of that energy of the Scottish American youth musicians, some of that collaboration that they have going on in Scotland, and energy towards this year of young people over here a little bit more, and also help young musicians to be coming over here and enjoying discovering what it is to perform, and also the how the American music and culture has, been influenced by Scotland and plays into so many of the new different music forms. So enough from me. I'm back to Rory.
So yeah, you're stuck with me again. I'm actually doing this on behalf of our Visit Scotland colleagues who were unable to participate this morning, so they do send their apologies, and you'll see that we're using our Scotland is Now hashtag again, and then in the bottom left hand corner there is the Year of Young People 2018. I'm only going to take a couple of minutes of your time, and I'm just going to talk you through a few slides and then finish with a very quick video, and then let the experts on the panel here fill you with a lot more useful information than I am certainly going to be able to do. So the guys over there are going to take us through the slides. So trad music. So as you can see from here, Visit Scotland, we're looking for a way to engage young Scots in traditional Scottish culture. So moving slightly away from your traditional ceilidh bands, but keeping the traditional Scottish music scene alive. It's uniquely Scottish. It's a growing scene in Scotland. Young musicians are connecting with their heritage. We saw the musicians last night in the Chelsea Choir, and just how talented they are. It's modernising what Scottish music is, and effectively it's making it cool, for want of a better word. So why is it important? So it protects our Scottish culture, and it gives people a taste of it. And indeed, when I was at the Seaside Highland Games last week, I stood and watched a rock show where front and centre there was a piper, and they were singing songs that are in the charts and that everybody would recognise. And it was really, it was amazing. It was too often you would walk past and just continue walking, and this sort of music stops and you take notice of it and you pay attention to it. So it can be done in a range of events. You can do it in a pub, you can do it at a festival, and I know a lot of the Scottish festivals are now focusing heavily in this area. If you want to move it on there. So a little bit about the growth. So brands are starting to carry this front and centre, and in addition to CalMac, Emirates and Visit Scotland, during the Year of Young People, I was lucky to accompany the First Minister to Holyrood Palace, where Prince Harry and Meghan were in attendance. That whole session was run by people under the Year of Young People banner, and within that there was a lot of musicians who performed for the Royals. That's something that will stick with those young people forever, but it's also something that I watched the Royals engage in, and I think certainly for Miss Markle that she probably hadn't appreciated that we can take our traditional Scottish cultures and modernise them into something so powerful, engaging and exciting to watch. And it was really an event that I'll look back on and think, and I've asked myself this a few times, how am I getting paid to be in this environment when it's actually fun? I feel like I should be paying for this opportunity. So as you can see there, it is growing. Camilla and team are doing a lot to promote it in the US. Just moving on to the final slide here. So there's high levels of engagement. We have target audiences, but it really is for everybody. We're already collecting the data on how much it's being viewed online, and the ongoing campaign from Visit Scotland, it's continuing to run. It was meant to run for a year, but because it's so successful, that they're continuing to promote it for the time being. And just to finish, and you'll be glad to know I'm going to hand over to the panel, we have a 30-second clip from our colleagues that we just want to show you. With some noise, hopefully. I'm pretty sure you can all agree that that looks like a lot of fun. I'm going to hand back to the panel here, but that's just a little flavour of where we feel we can take traditional Scottish music and modernise it going forward. I hope you'll all agree that from time to time things need a refresh, and this is one that seems to be working very well. So I'm going to hand back to Camilla to kickstart the panel. That video is available. It is on YouTube. I can happily share the link. And you'll probably find that there's a lot more of it to go with it. Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm going to introduce very quickly our panel and then let them take over, give a little bit of input to how the music is affecting them and the arts for them. And then we can open up and have questions and make this a very interactive kind of the session, I hope, because it's so important to so many of us. Jamie McCutcheon, also known as Little Fire, I have known for several years since when he was slightly younger, came across here. Your passion is Burns, but with a modern twist to the, so taking the traditional and taking it forward from there. We then have, Sean, I'm going to butcher your last name, I know. We then have Sean Healy, who is a very celebrated fiddle player, violinist, teacher, but also really primarily a performer. And you has an extensive biography in the book here, so I won't read it out to you, but a leader in his field based in Washington, D.C., Jamie being from Scotland and joining us from there. And then from here in Detroit, a very important element to all of this, of course, is Amy Campbell, who is going to speak about the program you have here for scholarships for young people, because all of this through stipends and different small amounts of money, large amounts of money, the arts need fostering, and we need to help these young people along. And so I look forward to hearing how the Detroit St Andrews have been doing that. So Jamie, would you like to tell us a little bit more?
Thank you. Thank you, Camilla. I hope you're all very well today. It's great for me to join you. First time in Michigan. Hope you're all having a great time at the conference. For me, I'm from Ayrshire, so I'm a wee bit away from home, but you're all making me feel very much at home, so thank you very much. I'm a singer-songwriter, and I never thought I would actually come and play in North America, ever. You know, why would I? It's so far away from Scotland. and from Ayrshire. And so for me, it's quite a surreal opportunity to be here with you all and to share my thoughts and insights, which I'm very glad to do. So the first time that I came to North America, I very gingerly chapped on the door of the American Scottish Foundation online, and I must admit it felt like I was brass necking it a wee bit. You know, I'm just this wee guy from Ayrshire that does a bit of burns. And I was absolutely over the moon to get a positive response from Camilla, and I performed at one of the Burns suppers in New York, which was an incredible experience for me. And from that, I've been over several times. I had no idea about the level of passion and hunger, desire for Scottish culture in America, which will obviously surprise you because you have it and you embody it. But I sincerely had no idea. And one of the most special things to me is making connections over in North America with the Scottish organisations, musicians and people involved in the arts. And I'm really interested in that symbiotic relationship. And for me, it really is all about the connections. I'll let John speak.
So, when you were starting to get going, you had to push through. And how did you take that on in Scotland? And I think we're very lucky now that we have the World Wide Web, and we can put your Facebooks up and your Twitters up, and you can push things along. And also, you don't need to record in quite the same old way that we used to do of putting a record out. You can put it all up online. So, how did you had an early passion in your teens, and how did you then take that forward over those first years so that you managed to get into record at Burns's Cottage?
So for me, I started singing at 14, and to do Burns was a very natural progression living in Ayrshire, because we're force-fed it. We're force-fed it, which kind of links into, the idea of exactly, transferring heritage to the next generation. If it is force-fed, there's typically going to be a resistance towards it. You have to make it attractive and contemporary, the way that you engage with people. And for me, it was just having, and I'm not being ageist, I'm not, having kind of younger teachers come into the school that had a more kind of contemporary approach to teaching Burns. It wasn't rote learning. They were bringing it to life, if you like. And for me, I think that's absolutely key.
Have you, when you've been over here, have you had a chance to, Professor Headley's point, to maybe work with some of the schools? I was just thinking to myself, when we have musicians come through, it would probably be a good idea to try to set up school visits, for instance. Have you been, because I know that they're keen to see that, and so maybe we need to think about that. Has that been something you've done?
I think it would be absolutely key, engaging with the schools, being able to go in and bring Scottish culture to life for younger students. I know that's something that Sean was talking about earlier on.
So, Sean, to your experiences, how has your career taken shape, and what can we learn from your energy that has got you to this point? And how would you like to share it? Because that seems to be one thing. People love to share it with the rest of their community and see how they can bring more people on and collaborate.
So I started, hello. I started playing when I was about 10 years old, and I had grown up with all kinds of different folk music in my household. My dad's side related to the Douglas family by way of Australia, and my grandmother was a World War II bride and moved over to the States with her family, and she was a pianist, and she played all these old Scots folk tunes, and so I grew up with knowing something about it, but didn't think it was strange. But of course, when I would talk about it to my friends, nobody knew anything about this kind of culture, or even just the songs that were passed down. And I have to say that one of the biggest things for me was just going to a Highland Games for the first time, and I just started playing the fiddle, and having the ability to or the opportunity to compete in a fiddle competition was really significant because like anybody could do that. You don't have to be of Scottish heritage, which is great. It's inclusive, and it made me, even at that age of 11 or 12, do my own research to figure out, because I didn't have a teacher at the time, what can I play that would fit in this competition. And I learned so much, and that kind of started off my love with as a learning classical music. I went to school for classical music and got a degree playing all that music and playing in symphonies, playing solo, playing with solo with symphonies. So I have all that experience as well. But one of the biggest things for me coming into Scottish music was some of the old music of Scotland. And when the first time I went to Scotland, I went to the Isle of Skye, and I had all this old repertoire of the time of Burns and 18th century music, and I just thought that was the golden heart of Scottish music. That's kind of where the fiddle took off, and composers like Neil Gow, who met Burns several times, and that's the kind of music that actually paved my way into the realm. But I was kind of shocked when I went to the Isle of Skye. I was the only one who knew the music, and I was sharing it with all of them. They're like, "Wow, that's a great tune. What is that tune?" And I said, "You don't know this?" But the thing is I think that it was a lot of that was suppressed for such a long time, and you can actually find a lot of that old music still played in places like Cape Breton. And I think that the modernization of trad music is so great, but I always am trying to urge everybody not to forget about this other wonderful types of music. There's so much wealth of different kinds of music in Scotland, from all the different regions, and it's been kind of my mission to keep some purity going on in there, but I'm just loving what I'm seeing in the trad scene. Every time I go to Glasgow, I stay up all night playing tunes with people my age. It's pretty great. So yeah.
Have you been recording?
Yes, I actually, one of the biggest ways that support came to me to do my first album, which I have copies here, was a crowdfunding, and was supported by different St. Andrew's Society's members would put some support in to do this album, and that was the biggest project of last year for me. And what it showcases is a journey through time and through Scotland. So it starts out with an old Gaelic song, which came from the Outer Hebrides, and then two of my original tunes. So we're kind of already fusing in the ancient with the modern right from the get-go. And then it takes you on a journey through Burns music, some of Burns music, and then go into some of the modern pipe tunes. And I tried to make it more about like taking the listener on a journey, so you could kind of hear, just the wealth of music that is in Scotland, and then I slip over to some of my other heritage. The other half of me is Irish, so we go over to Ireland, but only by way of another Scottish connection, which is in Donegal. So when I went to Donegal this summer, I heard. I was in Ireland for a little bit this summer, and I heard all this music in all the other places in Ireland that was Irish, and then as soon as I went to Donegal, I was playing all my Scottish repertoire. So it's very interesting that they still keep that over there as well.
And you two are going to collaborate a little bit this evening, I hear?
Yes.
So that's what we're meant to be about. But all of this is also, Amy, to the point of the fact that we have to nurture the young talent and help them in different ways, whether it be by giving them the opportunity to perform, as we did with the Chelsea House last night, or at the Highland Games, or through different bits of stipends and different things. How does the St. Andrews Detroit handle this, and what do they offer?
Actually, I'm here on behalf of our piper, David Martin. He is our expert in the music field. And this year, we granted 21 partial scholarships in dancing, piping, and fiddle. We spent a little under $11,000 for these grants, which came from our 2017 Highland Games raffle. And
Fabulous.
It is fabulous, right? And we've been doing this for 25 years, and I'm sure we've granted over $200,000. And Dave Martin gets involved with all the instructors, sends out applications, and then they're sent in to him, and then we take it from there. And these young students perform for us at each membership meeting that we have.
And then you see them coming along in
Yes.
the following years as they develop in their craft.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is so fantastic.
Uh-huh.
One of the things I think I'd love to sort of throw out is also that is to maybe have some young ambassadors of music. We talk about young ambassadors within the alumni, but maybe we could, start to have some ambassadors of our young ambassadors of music who we are recognizing. So what do you feel would help you be able to perform here? I mean, if you come over here as an amateur, you can come here without having to have the visas. But as you start to grow your craft and come over from Scotland, what are some of the challenges you're having to meet? Because we want to, this is so important for us to keep our young people coming over and interacting with our community. So.
I think for me, initially, certainly the bureaucracy is a wee bit of a scary thing. It seems like there's so many hoops to jump through, and that's something I think could be.
So at the moment, you come as an amateur.
Well, yes, and I certainly I think it could be simplified for musicians who aren't typically business folks to understand the paperwork.
Well, I think we'll leave that to the Scottish Government to discuss at another time. So when we go over to, when they have the opportunity to go over to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival and take part in that, there's special opportunities and visas that are made possible for that to occur. Have you thought about going over there to perform and be a part of the Edinburgh Fringe and what's happening over there, and take America over to Scotland?
Well, yes, and when I was in Scotland, I've actually set up my own tour before in Islay, and I've made the tour around whiskey because there's several tunes in my repertoire that are specifically about whiskey. So I had a great I was fortunate to be able to do that without a visa, and I'm not really sure how I did it, but it did work, and people were very nice, and I went to places like Jura and played in Jura, and people were very welcoming. But yes, I have actually been to the Fringe Fest, and I just literally thought it was like the center of the world for the arts during that time, and I would definitely want to be involved in that. And I didn't really get a chance to mention too much, but part of my work as also as an educator is I have been going to schools, and people have been writing grants. Like last year, I had a friend who wrote a grant to get me out to a school in Maine, and I worked with the kids for a whole day and sent her pieces ahead of time, a couple months ahead of time, from the Scottish repertoire to learn with the whole orchestra. And then I came in after they had had the chance to practice and fine-tuned things, made it sound more traditional, fiddly, whatever you want to call it, and then they performed in a concert with me, and it was just really great to see that community involvement with the kids, and I think that is a huge point that everybody's hit on today about visiting the schools, and that's one of the biggest ways you can get the younger generation involved, for sure.
I think one of the things that we'd all like to talk about too is how we can maximize the opportunity of an artist being here and know about it between ourselves within our network. I think that's one of the things that SNALC can do, and I think we could be working more closely, I hope, with your office, Rory, to know who's around, what's going on, with a bit of lead time to see how we can maximize their opportunity. So do people have some questions for us?
Yes, I'd like to turn on the mic. There we go. both of you start off at a younger age as an amateur musician. How did you make the transition from being an amateur musician to being a professional musician in order to support yourself to be the ambassador of music, whether it's within the United States or it's within Scotland being brought to the United States?
Fortuitously, I would say, it's just kind of happened. Just by following passion, by following my passion, which has always been singing. And one of the things I was wanting to mention was it is opportunities to meet musicians like Sean that I think helps to strengthen my appreciation of what is native to me in Scotland, and having that relationship to almost kind of bring a wee bit of validation to each other as musicians in Scotland and musicians in North America. But certainly by following passion and a wee bit of luck.
And also you did get endorsements that therefore validated what's going on, and that's important. So whether it's the Detroit St Andrews or one of our other organizations validating by these artists that we see something in, I think that also helps. So I would encourage you always to get those endorsements, because it helps us to know a little bit more about you and brings attention. Because I have to be honest, when I saw Burns Cottage or the Ayrshire Council against your name and saying you were a Burns ambassador, that did flag something. Over to you, Sean.
So when I went to music school, one of the things they don't really prepare you for is what do you do after, and that is kind of a fault of a lot of colleges I've seen. Is they do they really train you how to handle the business of being a musician? You can't just be a musician; you have to be a business person, and you also need to work really hard, and you also need a lot of help and support. And I was very fortunate, people like Bart, when I moved up to DC, before I even moved up, he was giving me gigs, and I was driving up from Norfolk 3 hours to do, what was the first gig I did was like a whiskey tasting where I played in between the tastings at his house, so, and he connected me with people like the Kate Perkins with the Scottish government, and Shannon Hall, and eventually Camilla. We connected, and so definitely any helping hands, like never. It doesn't even have to be through funding or scholarships, but just pointing an artist into the right direction, and saying like, hey, you might want to check out these guys, or maybe we can see how we can use a particular artist's skills to add to our event or whatever's going on.
And also, I think all of us benefit from talking to you and saying, who else is around? What else is going on? Because then we hear about the other artists that we might know about that you're playing with and doing things that love the same heritage and culture, and that helps us grow the network. Yeah. So we need to talk to you more as well.
We were talking this morning about Rachel Barton Pine, who's been featured at this leadership conference a couple of times. She's a wonderful violinist, and just texted me to say hello, and she is going over to Glasgow to perform with the Royal Scottish National Orchestra in 2020. She had arranged for Tim MacDonald, who's a friend, to come into the Scottish Home and have a fiddle camp for some of our younger members. There were about 50 people we had for a full day, and then they came back and performed for members of the society. And I know that Rachel has also been down with you at Jink and Diddle. I wondered if you might tell us a little bit about how those type of things work, so we could host similar events where we are.
So he's kind of Gus is referring to like, maybe, was it a weekend or something like that? So there's tons of music camps all around the country, all over the place, really. And that was one of the biggest ways I was inspired, was by going to a music camp. First one was in the Isle of Skye, like I said, and then one was in Maine that I went to, and now I'm teaching at it. I'm on faculty. And but like to do that, you know, you got to find, you have to find an artist that knows, you know, like Tim McDonald is also, like me, has a great love, even more so, of the 18th century music. He plays a Baroque instrument, and he's taken it to the next level with that, but he manages to make it like accessible to any generation, which I think is incredible. And something that I've been doing also, like somebody mentioned earlier, that singing, I think it was Dr. Donna Heddle, yes. So she was mentioning singing, you know, also brings people together. And I've started studying Gaelic myself, and started learning how to sing in Gaelic. And even if it's just like before, I've gotten a whole room full of people, like in an auditorium, to drone like a low note, and then that's like my bagpipe drone, and then I'll just start playing this old Gaelic song and then maybe sing some of the lyrics, and that just totally transforms the experience, you know, from doing something like that. So I think the camp idea, or just like workshops, master classes, is a great way to like engage the community, and like what we did up in Maine, I performed with these kids, and they had a chance to be in a concert, you know, and that was a huge boost for all of them that were able to be there, and just to be on stage with an artist that they had been listening to for months. And, you know, I felt like a superstar with all these little kids, you know, and then of course all their parents come, and just getting that community involvement is really key.
Well, I know we're doing dance later, but I think the mothers are key to the dance with the young girls and the boys, because they're reliving their youth and everything else and what they love to do. And as I mentioned last night, I thought I was a musician until I heard somebody actually play properly a few years later, and I realized I couldn't. And I think that's a lot of us, you know, as we have young children and everything, and kids, we want to see them do what we weren't able to do, and pass on and become involved in things. So I think that's why you have such enthusiastic parents, probably part of the time. Do you want to comment to that?
I just wanted to say that one of our fiddle students this year, Lily Beasley, attended Jinkadiddle, and she came in first in her age group, 18 and under. So at the Nationals, yes. So were you there for that? Yeah. Well, we were very proud of her.
Yes, I'd like to say this doesn't really pertain to Sean because he already lives in the U.S., but for Jamie coming here, I know there's a problem with work visas. I think it's hard to come here and on a work visa, but there's a little bit of a way around that is when you come as like sponsored by somebody or as a cultural event. And I think we have discussed this at other leadership conferences, that we as a group representing those of us that want to, you know, embrace our heritage need to be more committed and connected to, we have talked about bringing some artists over and jointly paying the fees for air and things, and then going to Chicago, Toronto, New York, Detroit in concert. And then I also say, because I feel, Sean, you've kind of got this nailed down, there's a huge market in master classes in high schools. And maybe we as societies, we kind of know in our area what schools have the best orchestras, a fiddle orchestra. Chelsea High School, obviously. And if you went there and did a master class, as Sean has, then you know. You get the community, you get the parents, you get grandpa and grandma, you get everybody. And so that's a real good venue for you to put $1 in your pocket, and it's a great way for us to promote our heritage.
One thing I just shared with John earlier was that I opened up a conversation with Highlands and Islands about hopefully having some musicians here in April Now, they would be amateur, which gets around a lot of things, but to then see if maybe they could move around to a few places, and, you know, down to Washington, of course, and then across out to, Gus said he'd love to have them out here and into Detroit. And that way you maximize them being here for 2 weeks or something. And I think we can, as SNALC, we've always said we want to do more of that. And so not necessarily always with the immigration situation, that some of the younger ones with the who are still amateur, we can get around a lot of things that way. But also, if one thing we want to talk to the Scottish Government and Office about is when they go down and they are doing South by Southwest, that if there is the opportunity to maybe look at them coming and tagging on another week of shows with some of us in different areas. And that could be done through planning. And I think the thing we'd like to share to you, Rory, is that we all want to do that, I think. Is that right? Yes. Correct. So a takeaway. Next question.
Hey there. Just to stay on this conversation about all of our different organizations working together to get musicians and artists over here. We've been working to get a storyteller over, and one of the things I think we really need to do is bridge the gap between our artists over in Scotland or around the country and our organizations. It might be very helpful to have a platform where we can go and have a database of people. Not only that, but where are these people going to be? Where are they already booked? Where is Jamie performing in July, for example? And if Jamie's performing in the Midwest in July, then my organization can take advantage of that and say, hey, you know, I know you're coming over in July. Do you have time to come and help our organization? And, you know, if we have a platform where everybody is able to access, we can bridge that gap between our artists and our organizations.
I think that's something we want to talk about tomorrow, how to maximize our growing group and platform and how to take that forward. I think that's really been something that was Wayne and Alan's wish from the beginning, and now we're beginning to see the reality of how we can do it. So next question. Absolutely.
Yes. The St. Andrews Society of Detroit has been particularly influenced and impacted by its ability to have Scottish artists participate on our behalf. Peggy Dunlop brought brought Caledon to us. You'll notice in your packet an album from the trio of Scottish singers and their magnificent pianist. That they've performed on behalf of the St. Andrews Society on, what, 4 or 5 occasions? Several. Including one of those visitations.
Yeah. At our games.
And the visitation with the Fraser, was it the Fraser High School?
Yes, Fraser.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they contributed to our understanding of Scottish culture in such an intimate manner. Secondly, even before them, we had a member's son, and I think he became a member. His name is Jeremy Kittle, who you may be familiar with. He was weaned by us. He performed for us for a number of years, both here and at the Highland Games, before he rose to somewhat eminent success. So we know here the impact of our relationship with these Scottish-related artists to our benefit, and we encourage each of you to continue your efforts to spread the good news.
We need to share the stories as well. So I think that's another thing that we can talk about is, you know, taking some of these historic stories and posting them and going further with all of that.
Last question.
The theme of this conference is how to connect young people to this traditional Scottish culture. My question is addressed to the, I think, one person under 30, sorry, Jamie, in this room. We should have had more. But Sean, how do we as a community connect with people under 30 what communications, what technologies, where do we get to the people and communicate with young people? Sorry, Jamie. Again, I'll make it up with giving you a whiskey later.
I'm only 32. Just slightly over. Well, we've already been talking about just the importance of social media, and I can't stress that enough as somebody who's really trying to get my name out there. All of the platforms need to be utilized, not just some, and websites need to be updated constantly, because I know several people have told me about some societies they've gone to, and they're like, I can't see any of the events, or something's not right, or there's no email list here, or this link doesn't work, so I don't know. I was thinking last night that maybe it wouldn't be too much to see of even just hiring somebody once a year to just clean up a website, like somebody that's actually that's their profession, because I've had to teach myself how to do my own, and it's not easy. So yeah, I mean, like, just to make sure that things are very clearly outlined, because if you're having an event and young people can't see it on their networks, and then, I mean, how could you expect them to show up if they don't know about it? And also, making events accessible in terms of the price of the attendance is also a big thing, I think. And just, I don't know, like, there's got to be ways to budget on account of that.
I was talking, just very quickly, I was talking with National Trust for Scotland, and we were saying how sometimes it's better to make an event $20 or $10 and have a full room, and than to be charging $40 with young people, or to give them the opportunity to be a member if they attend, because then they become part of our organizations, and that helps us with growing that involvement. So I think those are all things that we need to take on board. But to your point, Facebook isn't as important to you anymore. It's Instagram, or
I have to use all of them.
You use all of them.
Yeah, so Facebook has been really great, because you can run ads, but you can also run ads on Instagram that don't cost that much, and you can reach people all over. For me, all over the world, it's been really easy to reach people. But then if you focus it into a certain area, like your area, because I mean, the old ways of putting ads in newspapers, I mean, that just doesn't really get anywhere anymore. And I think that just even putting maybe like some kind of YouTube links, make sure you're on that platform as well. People are always down to like scroll through and just see what's up, and if they have to go onto other sites and stuff, they're just too lazy to do that. So
and the films you're giving us from Scottish government
those are
great, because even the ads don't necessarily get clicked as much, but they see a film and they click on it. So it's good for us, and it's good for the Scottish government.
Well, I want to thank Camilla and the panel for their activity this morning. Thank you very much. Just give them a hand of applause.